A good Breeders' Cup week, everybody. Welcome into the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk, and we are set for 14 championship races this Friday and Saturday at Del Mar. Special welcome to those of you watching within the first Breeders' Cup wager guide. Hopefully you're enjoying all the handicappers information, the historical trends, and all the videos and everything we've got for you in the wager guide. Be sure to check back throughout the week for more information. We record this podcast each and every Tuesday, so we're happy you're with us on Breeders' Cup week. We typically take on 5 hot topics in horse racing, and boy, do we have 5 for you this week. But before we get to that, Jeff Siegel, you're in recovery mode. You were part of the big to-do yesterday at Del Mar when post positions in the morning line odds were announced for Breeders' Cup 41. You're the official track morning line maker at Santa Anita and Del Mar, so you were tasked with it this year to set the line for the Breeders' Cup races. Tell us about the experience.
It doesn't pay enough. I can tell you that right now. I had plenty of time to prepare for this, but you have to make the line before the draw. So sometimes you put horses at a morning line that you wouldn't have done if you could have, normally waited for the draw, but that's not possible. The other thing is there were a couple of scratches that impacted my line, so I had to kind of redo them on the fly, and there's no waiting around. They want it like now. So there was not a lot of recalibration. And then you top it off by having some difficult races. I mean,
sure.
I've got a 30-1 limit, so I can't, I have to spend some points on horses that aren't going to get them, if you know what I mean. And so that made it difficult. And then you've got a number of horses that like I'll give you an example. Sierra Leone at 12-1. I mean, I think he's better than that. So I couldn't drop him unless I raise somebody else. You got a 21, 27, 128 limit. And all of a sudden, those points, they disappear in a hurry when you start making everybody 6-1 that you think they should be. So you start raising things, and then you end up with a line that you're not real happy with, but that's what you have to lay out. It's not you got to play by the rules, so to speak. And the rules are your odds have to add up to a certain amount. And you can't go over it. So I don't know. It was challenging. It was fun. It's like, I don't even care who wins on Friday and Saturday. I just hope the line holds up. And I'll be happy if that happens, because that's the job that I have to do. And it's a labor of love, but it also was made for a very intense Monday. And hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes. And by the way, thank you for your input, Jeremy. I asked a few questions. You answered them. And I took your word to heart. So I can always point the finger at you if I really mess up.
Yeah, there you go. I'm there for you, partner. No doubt about that. The happiest man in America this week might be John White. He was the former line maker who retired earlier this year. You took over the role. John's Dodgers are up 3-0 in the World Series, and he didn't have the stress of having to put the line together. So John is enjoying this Breeders' Cup week.
Yes.
You can be sure of that. Okay, let's get into our 5 topics here. We're going to break things up a little bit. It's all Breeders' Cup handicapping. So how do things fit, and how do we mold some of our thoughts? That's what we're going to do here now over the next 45 minutes or so. First topic of 5 this week, the winners and losers at the draw. Which horses drew well, which horses did not. Let's start on the downside, Jeff. Let's talk about the dirt mile and one of your losers for the draw all the way on the outside. Skippy Longstocking drew post 14 in here, winner of the Charlestown Classic the past 2 years, but he has got a tough row to hoe out there with a short run to the first turn.
That is a killer, especially for a horse with his style. Now, he's a nice horse. He ran very well in this race before last year, so I know he's tough, but he's not a real quick horse, even though he likes to lay fairly close. He's certainly not a deep closer. So he's really going to be stuck in no man's land. If he was blazingly quick and I knew he'd get over, it wouldn't be terrible. And if he had no speed, he was just drop over, that wouldn't be terrible either. But he's stuck in the middle. And I really think I laid him at 4-1 because I thought maybe he wouldn't get a terrible post. But for him, it is. Whereas Saudi Crown on the rail, he's 5-1. If I had to do it over, I'd reverse those two and maybe even make Skippy a little longer. But I think if I were the connections to Skippy Longstocking, I wouldn't be sleeping now. I'd be so upset because his chances just diminished considerably.
Speed on the far inside, speed on the far outside. A lot of times that ratchets up the tempo. One of the benefactors of that tough draw for some of these horses, maybe the come from behinders in the dirt mile. We'll see how that shakes out. As for my losers in the post position draw, let's go to the juvenile turf, where we take you to the outside, the left side of the gate in here. The big Europeans in here, New Century, Aramore City, and Henry Matisse are in the 11, 12, and 13. Also, the Waco Kids in the 9. That means Mentee, the brother to Fierceness for Todd Pletcher, who goes 2 turns for the first time in the juvenile turf, is surrounded by Europeans. I go back to my old quarter horse handicapping days, and this is what we call a bad neighborhood. The odds of 5 Europeans all surrounding you breaking well and clean in a Breeders' Cup race is probably about 50-1 of that happening. Mentee, you are in a bad neighborhood, I'm sorry to say, because I like you as a horse, but the outside of the gate here, to me, in the juvenile turf, they are the losers here because they're all just clumped together. Then you take the ground loss into consideration as they go the 2-turn race here at Del Mar going the mile. So a tough draw there for the outside runners in the juvenile turf. Let's put a positive spin on things, Jeff. What about a horse who we think got the best of the post position draw? Maybe there's a little gasp when your horse draws the far outside post position in some races, but you and I are in agreement that this wasn't a bad draw in the 14 hole for Next.
No, it's specifically for Next. Now, there might have been other horses that had drawn the 14 hole that I would have downgraded considerably, but not Next. In fact, you remember back, I think, what was the year? 2008, I think it was, in the Derby, when the Big Brown won the Derby from the 20 hole.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, a draw that Dutrow actually chose. They were choosing their own posts at the time, because he wanted the horse to be able to run the first quarter of a mile under cruise control and not have to be niggled at or sent to avoid being shuffled back or getting dirt in his face. Whereas Next, on the outside, he's got to have a quarter of a mile to kind of ease himself over and find the spot, and on the outside. And then even though he'll probably be losing ground most of the way, maybe not fanned out, but he gets to move when he wants to move. And he's one of these push button horses that I didn't want, stuck on the inside where he was going to had to be sent out of the gate and then taken back and then get that dirt in his face and then get all messed up. From the outside post, he can dictate his pace. Is he good enough? I don't know. That's why they won the race. But going into the far turn, he should be in a position to be able to duplicate his best race because of where he will be, dictated by his outside draw. I love the draw for him. Again, you got to run the race. You got to prove you're good enough, but at least I think he'll have his chance.
I like it for 2 other reasons, too, in addition to what you said. Luan Machado is his rider. Luan Machado, of course, most famously misjudged the finish line at Keeneland a couple of weeks ago and took the wrath of, rightfully so, of social media people. But he is an inexperienced rider on a $7 million stage like this. Even the top riders are going to be nervous in a big race like this for the money that's on the line, but a lot of them have been in this situation before. He hasn't. So it's not like he's got to look left. He's got to look right and figure out where everybody is. And, I got one speed out here. I got one speed over there. He's just to the outside. All he has to do is turn left, look and see what's going on. And he's got that long run through the stretch the first time to figure it out. The other reason I kind of like it is, if he gives away a little ground loss in exchange for being in the clear, this is a 1.5 mile and 1.75 mile horse. If there's ever been a horse in the Breeders' Cup Classic at 1.25 miles who says, I don't mind a little bit of ground loss, I'll run an extra 35, 40, 50 feet because I lost a bit of ground on the clubhouse turn, he's the one. So this is actually a great spot for him. And also, he has been winning so easily in those marathon races that he's not used to taking a bunch of dirt. So keeping him outside of other horses and in the clear, I think it's a really good spot. Let's just talk real quick with post positions on the Classic one more time because I want to go back and look here at number 12, Arthur's Ride, who may be the speed of the speed in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Fierceness is to his inside. We know Fierceness doesn't like to get involved early and get into a tussle. I fear that if Arthur's Ride is faster than Fierceness and cuts over in front of him, Fierceness may not give the head back to John Velasquez, and we might be looking at a wrestling match if he gets crossed over. So Fierceness may have to go and kind of hold his position just to keep Arthur's Ride from cutting over in front of him. That could turn up the pace in this year's Breeders' Cup, and a horse who's sitting 3rd or 4th could just be sitting there licking their chops, which is kind of what you want with City of Troy, with Next. I think some of those horses who want to sit 3rd, 4th in this race are kind of feeling better about the way the draw shook out.
I agree. And, I wouldn't be surprised if the pace isn't quite as fast as maybe people expected, a mile and 1/4. But that doesn't mean, even if it is not real fast, that somewhere along the way, and it's probably going to be somewhere midway, where Fierceness and Arthur's Ride are going to eye each other somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to let Arthur loosen the lead, but on the other hand, they may be in a position of going relatively moderate, not slow, but moderate. Mm-hmm. And that, as you just pointed out correctly, Jeremy, that's right into Next's wheelhouse, because they may fool him into thinking he's running a mile and a half, And
right.
because once he gets into his rhythm, you go back and look at his late pace figures. You mentioned that going a mile and a half longer distances, he flies home like it's a middle distance race.
Yeah.
He's a turn of foot. He just, and he's never been asked, so we don't even know how fast he really could go. That's why I thought that draw was so helpful for him. And I made him 8-1. I wish, again, another situation where I would like to have made him 6 or 5. Couldn't do it because of all the money that's going on to the other horses. But man, I mean, it sets up for if I'm the next people, I'm sleeping well.
There have been more famous classics. There have been more established classics. You go back and you think, okay, we're going to get Sunday Silence Easy Goer again. We're getting Ali Sheba and Ferdinand, the 2 Derby winners, together in a classic. We've seen those. We've seen American Pharoah at the end of the Triple Crown go for the quote unquote Grand Slam, as hokey as that was. But I don't know if we've seen a classic that had more interesting storylines, from the Japanese to City of Troy, the Epsom Derby winner. This isn't just some English horse coming over. It's the Epsom Derby winner doing it. Then you got next the marathon horse with these just gaudy win margins. It's just, how do you measure this horse? It's what a fascinating race. And then you've got Fierceness, the juvenile winner from last year, trying to make history and becoming the first 2-year-old to come back and then win the classic. All the horses from the Triple Crown Trail, the Sierra Leones and horses like that. Very, very interesting version of the classic this year. And I'll tell you what, come about mid-July, we were wondering who the hell was going to run in this thing, right? There were no handicap division horses. The one thing we haven't talked about are 4-year-olds and up running on the dirt at intermediate distances. Arthur's Ride's about the only one of them showing up for this year's classic. Let's talk about one more winner from the Breeders' Cup from the Breeders' Cup post draw. This one for Friday's card. I thought in the juvenile fillies turf, my winner of the draw was Thought Process. I thought she really drew nicely here in post number 7 for the filly and mare turf. Lake Victoria is the big favorite in here. And I'll tell you what, we talked about listening to trainer interviews from around the world and how the international trainers can be pretty forthcoming. I thought with Lake Victoria, one thing I picked up on an interview with Aidan O'Brien was she had won at 7/8 of a mile. Last time she cut back to 6, and he was so proud of her for cutting back to 6. But he said, I knew she would do it because she's built like a sprinter. Well, sprinters are your blocky, strong, squatty type horses. Now she's going to go long, and she's down on the rail. She's got speed right next to her. That might not be the best draw for Lake Victoria, which is kind of interesting in here. And so Thought Process, the American who just wants to kind of track, I think she might just get a beautiful trip there from post 7, Jeff. I thought that's why that made her, to me, the winner of the post draw for the Friday races.
She's going to fall into a perfect trip. She's going to look around and see a filly from Europe that is terrific, obviously way better than she's ever run against.
Right.
But I'm convinced that Thought Process is going to run great. Whether great's good enough to beat Lake Victoria, that's why they run the races again. And man, Lake Victoria, I mean, her form, undefeated daughter of Frankel, fast on figures, and with a proven Group 1 filly. I mean, usually these are the kinds of fillies that are put away for the winner and pointed for the guineas, and and she is the winner book favorite for the guineas anyway. So you don't usually get this good, but that's all the more reason to really kind of enjoy this race, because I think Thought Process is really, really good. She's such a good athlete. She's such a good mover. She's got everything you'd like to have. Other than the fact that she's not from Europe, because if she was from Europe, she would be all the talk. That's how good I think she is. And yet, unusually, this year, we've got maybe the best over there. So, I mean, it's just a really good edition of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf.
Let's go back and take a look at Thought Process last time out, gearing up at Santa Anita.
They still have to catch Thought Process, the prohibitive favorite, just bounding along under a strong hold as well. Tequila and Therapy pushed along in second. Kasalu at the rail. C'est La Vie Charlie in the blue colors. Behind them, Tigerish looking for racing room. And Jack's Magic Girl far back, top of the stretch. And Thought Process has opened up a 4-length lead. Kasalu in second. Center of the course, C'est La Vie Charlie. Tigerish at the rail. But they had no chance. Thought Process in another league. Thought Process wrapped up throughout, scores by 6, and it could have been much, much more.
All right, before we just coronate these two fillies, though, in the juvenile fillies turf, I'm going to rain on some parades here with a couple stats. No Californian has finished in the exacta, much less win the juvenile fillies turf. So Thought Process, she might be the best Californian we've seen come to the juvenile fillies turf, but she better be. And Aiden O'Brien, who's got the big favorite in here, Lake Victoria, he's 1 for 17 in this race lifetime. So this has not been Aiden's bell cow race. The Americans have won it 13 of the 16 years. So who knows? It's time to handicap the juvenile fillies turf. We've got a lot to still look at, Jeff.
At least he won one. I think he's over what? 17 or 19 or something like that in the classic. So, I mean, a lot of offers there. Yes. The only thing that I will say is, yes, you're absolutely correct, but the horses involved don't know that. So
they do not.
Out going into the race.
I remember asking trainer Donnie Von Hemel one time. He had a horse named War Machine who had just won the big stakes race at Remington Park for like the second or third year in a row. And I said, that's got to feel great for War Machine winning this race, 3 years in a row like that. And he said, Jeremy, unless War Machine's trophy is made out of hay, he doesn't really care. And that's true, If he can eat the trophy, it would mean something to him. Other than that, we're the humans who put these emotions to some of these things. But we will see. Does Aiden O'Brien have the winner this year? Do the Californians have the winner in the juvenile fillies turf? We know this. It was a very good draw for Thought Process.
Yeah.
Let's go to our second topic on the board this week. So, look, we talked some winners and losers at the draw, but let's just talk about the most logical and probable winner on the card. Jeff, a lot of people would point to the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and you made Torpedo Anna the 4-5 morning line favorite. She's the shortest price in the Breeders' Cup. Does that translate to you as the most likely winner? Let's talk about her first. Torpedo Anna, how does she stack up in this year's Distaff, which has kind of fallen apart with some big names dropping out in recent weeks? We lost last year's winner, Idiomatic. We lost the California Buzzsaw, Adair Manor prior. It's kind of falling into her lap, right?
Yes, it is. Again, another situation where I didn't want to make her 4-5, but the second choice is a Japanese filly who is undefeated, but nobody knows anything about her. And everybody else in here, or she's the third choice, actually. Raging Sea was all out to beat a lesser field. I had to make her someone had to be second choice.
Right.
So all of a sudden, to balance the line, I had to keep dropping Torpedo Anna all the way down to 4-5. And if she were to run back to her Travers win, she should and will be 4-5, But then she reacted, I guess she reacted and ran our buyer points, buyer number dropped almost 20 points, less than that. But and she was life and death to win. Didn't get a great trip. Maybe wasn't completely knocked about. Maybe it's not really fair to condemn her for a winning win. I mean, she did win it. But you never know which one is going to show up now, Jeremy, the one that ran so well in the summer and in the Travers, or the one that was life and death to beat fillies that would be 20-1 or higher in this race. I don't know. Yeah. That's what makes her a little bit vulnerable. Not that I don't think she will win. I think she will win. But when you talk about her and then you talk about Cogburn, I mean, which one do you trust the most? And that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, look, the Cotillion took a lot out of, or the Travers took a lot out of Torpedo Anna going into the Cotillion, and the fillies who ran right behind her at Parks came back last week in the Mother Goose, and they didn't either won that race either in New York. So that race took a little out of them. I could almost be assured to run that close with Torpedo Anna. So where is she at this point in her season? That is a big question. But one horse who's fresh, he's only run 3 times, and we don't have to worry about where he's at in terms of the season, is Cogburn. And that's the other one that we're under consideration for the most likely winner, the most trusted horse on the card. Now, the turf sprint seems like it's a little bit of Yahtzee, right? I mean, you put them all in a cup and you shake them out and you see what number comes up. But this looks kind of cut and dry. If Cogburn runs his race, Jeff, he's just faster than everybody. And the Europeans drew terribly in this race with Big Evs in the 11, Bradsell in the 12. Of course, Bradsell was over here last year and then was scratched by the vets leading up to the Breeders' Cup. So I'm sure anybody backing Bradsell is kind of holding their breath and hoping that he gets to the gate this year. Izzy Vungu Vungu, the horse from South Africa, who I had a little interest in him second off the layoff, but he's going to be kind of wide in here too. Cogburn's post, you say, well, he's in the 9. What's the difference? He's fast as hell, and he's going to get out of there and start crossing over horses. Just to the inside of him is Big Invasion, who has no speed whatsoever. So Cogburn should just get a beautiful trip in here. He's just way faster than the 2 horses on his inside and outside. And if he can leave them and start making his way over, I don't see him getting beat in this spot. To me, he is the most likely winner on Breeders' Cup Day.
When you're looking at a short price favorite thinking that they could get beat, you look for either holes in the past performances or maybe an unhealthy work pattern or a bad draw or a course that, that maybe not favor him. Mm-hmm. Cogburn doesn't have any of those to worry about. I mean, he's good enough to win. We know that.
Right.
He's run well fresh. He is fresh, hasn't run since the first week in September by design. He's versatile enough where he's fast enough to make the lead, but he doesn't need the lead. I mean, he does not one of these horses that if he's not in front, he kind of looks suspect. Now, he can sit 3rd or 4th if he wanted to. He's just so fast that it doesn't usually have to happen. And this race has got some speed horses, but nobody faster than Cogburn. And if somebody outquicks him really, no big deal. I mean, again, he could break bad or something unforeseen could happen. That can happen in any situation. But looking at his chart here for Asmussen and his work pattern and his consistency and everything that adds up to, I don't see a hole in here. I don't. Plus, he can run on top of the ground. It's going to be pool table fast there. Other Cogburn. So, yeah, I mean, is he's 7-5 in the morning line? He might go lower. I'm not saying there's a lot of value, but how does he lose, really?
Just something disastrous happening at the start and just completely losing all chance. I think that's the way to beat him. But we'll mention this a little bit later in the program. But also keep in mind, he won on Kentucky Derby Day in the Churchill Downs Turf Sprint. So he's used to like a big hubbub crowd in a paddock and, 100,000, 150,000 people around him. So he's not going to be caught up by the situation there. And I know no horse has won from a prep at Kentucky Downs and Breeders' Cup history. I get that. But I would say that you could venture that most of the horses coming out of Kentucky Downs won at Kentucky Downs because they liked it there, right? They became kind of a situational winner. This horse was so established going to Kentucky Downs, it was a risk taking him there to run over the kind of quirky track. He wasn't trying to find himself for a big purse. He was running there because the Troy Stakes at Saratoga was washed off the turf twice. And so he ended up at Kentucky Downs and won in spite of going to Kentucky Downs, right? He won at Churchill Downs in the Churchill Downs turf sprint. He won at Belmont in the Jaipur, right? Or, the Belmont at Aqueduct, Belmont at Saratoga meet. So he's handled these big environments. That was on Belmont Day too. So he's used to running in complete nut houses. So I don't see how they end up beating him. And I don't think he fits into that, I'm going to eliminate the Kentucky Downs horses, because he's not a Kentucky Downs horse. He's a horse who kind of had a cup of coffee at Kentucky Downs, and he ran away from him when he did.
It is Cogburn to catch, 3/16 to go. No balls on the outside, moves up into second. Charcoal is down toward the inside, but Cogburn is opened up. Cogburn is opened up by 3. Then No Balls in second, one-timer, and Charcoal on the inside. No doubt about it. It is Cogburn. Cogburn scores by 4.
Jeff, I'll let you have the last word there. Then we think Cogburn a more certain winner than Torpedo Anna, right?
I do. I mean, again, it's not like he can't, like I say, he's going to be in front, but even if he isn't, who cares? Because he can do it. And in his form right now, and the way he's been training and his connections and all that, it's just, like you say, if he stumbles at the start, it's going to happen, but it can happen with anybody. So in the absence of something ridiculous like that, he's going to win.
Fair to say, if you're playing multi-race wagers, that's the single. Of course, Torpedo Anna could be a single as well on many, many tickets.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to our fourth topic on the board this week. Okay, let's get some value now. Which horses are the best value plays on Breeders' Cup Friday or Saturday? This doesn't necessarily mean long shots. We're going to talk long shots in a minute. We're talking about horses who just provide excellent value, and that's what you kind of get on Breeders' Cup Day, because as you talked about in just trying to set the morning line odds and predict what the public's going to do, which is your job as the line maker, you have great horses at prices you'll never see again, right? I mean, horses that are just like Skelly in the sprint, I think has been like 4 to 5 at every start, like up and down the line. And he could be pushing, 8, 10 to 1 in the sprint. So value is compared to the horse, right? The horse that we're talking about, who provides great value for their ability and your thought process on how they may run on Saturday or Friday. Jeff, which one are you going for in terms of your most valued horse?
Well, one of the things about a value horse is that you're giving up something to get something. You're giving up the certainty of a win, but you're gaining price, or at least a better price than you think you should be getting for betting on this horse. I really think that from a value standpoint, Jonathan's Way, the 2-year-old, undefeated in 2 starts, has got a really good chance to win. Mm-hmm. And I'm really convinced that he's not going to get hammered at the window, because he's not a Brad Cox, he's not a Pletcher, he's not a Baffert, he's mm-hmm. not the guy from Bowers Minor. He's not going to get bet because of that. He's also hasn't been on display in the morning as being, a flashy workhorse. He's been kind of out of sight, out of mind. No one is really going to gravitate to him. I made him 9-2. I'm convinced I'll get 9-2. I might even could get more than that, which mm-hmm. is bring value for a colt that's undefeated in 2 starts, very fast on numbers, had a terrible trip at Saratoga in his debut and rallied way out in the parking lot and still wasn't going away. Came back at Churchill and won a 1-turn mile. Instead of being dead last, he was on the lead, breezing on the front end, and won for fun. Again, a much better colt than I think that the form. In other words, both of his first 2 races, I think, were better than the line will show. So no one's going to look at him and saying, oh, wow, And then again, mm-hmm. He's got horses in the race that are going to take money. Let's face it. I mean, I think East Avenue is a really, really good colt. From the ground, he's going to have to bust out there and go. There's going to be others in there that are going to show speed. And I think that from a trip standpoint, I'm pretty convinced that Jonathan's Way is going to draft in and get the ideal second flight stalking trip. So for me, if I can get a really good 9-2, 5-1, maybe even 6-1 type of play, I'm happy. And I think I'll be happy in this race.
They come off the turn. Jonathan's Way heads for home in front by 1.5 lengths and dashes away by 2. Jonathan's Way in front with a furlong to go. Giacoso put in a bid down the center. Owen Almighty runs up into second. 16th to catch Jonathan's Way. Clear by 3. Owen Almighty chasing Jonathan's Way, who's a big winner by 4 in the end. Owen Almighty was second. Giacoso was third. Macedo was fourth.
So Jonathan's Way, Jeff's value play. For me, I've got a filly in the mile, and I love to bet these fillies in the mile. I love the French fillies. Porta Fortuna has been here before, and she was very successful last year in almost taking down the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf. I think she's got a big shot in the mile this year, and she is going to be my value play, Jeff. Porta Fortuna, well drawn in the 7 post for the mile. She's 4-1 in the morning line. And this is a filly, I think, with notable speech, obviously going to take some play. Ramachuel, another French filly down on the inside. But there are 2 Americans in this race. Unlike most years, we've got 2 Americans that legitimately are going to be in the mid-single digits. Carl Spackler, the 12, and Johannes, the 9. That helps if you like a European in this year's mile, because some years you just kind of draw a line through the American milers and say they just don't stack up. We've got 2 good ones this year, and maybe that's good enough to win this race. But I know what it's definitely going to do is it has to mathematically bump the prices up on some of these Europeans. And I think Porta Fortuna is the best of the Europeans. I'm really looking forward to betting her. I love her turn of foot. Let's go back and take a look at her in action last time out. And You tell me, Jeff, after seeing this, can she pick him up and lay him down?
Leave the 3-pole behind them, then Ilang, Vespertilio, Wendler, Magical Sunset, and getting a squeeze out the back is Jancis. They're in the straight. Just over a quarter to go. Fallen Angel from Soprano on the inside. Mama's Girl into a challenging position is Porta Fortuna. These 4 are wide across the track, 2 up on Ilang, and then Magical Sunset and Wendler's next. They're stretched from rail to rail. Staying on the outside is Vespertilio. In front now is Porta Fortuna, and away she goes from Fallen Angel Soprano. Porta Fortuna is the winner from Fallen Angel Soprano. Ilang finished off well as Porta Fortuna completes a hat-trick of wins at the highest level in the Matron Stakes for Tamarkand and Dominic O'Brien.
What a 3-year-old filly she is. I'm looking forward to her as my value play, Jeff.
These European milers, especially the fillies, they all look alike. They're not big and gangly. They're kind of smallish or mid-sized, compact, not compact, mid-sized. Which allows them to be handy. And when you get 14 horses on a tight course at Del Mar with a short run in from the top of the stretch to the wire, you don't have the luxury of winding up and then producing a long extended run. There's a hole there. You better get through it like now. It's like a good running back, who can find an opening and get done. And she's got that acceleration. And 3 straight Group 1 races. Going to love the firm ground. Going to love the top of the ground. Going to love the pace situation, because she's, again, one of these fillies, you get some cover. She won't be way back or anything like that. She'll be somewhere within range. And then when you ask her to run, she is going to accelerate, which is one of the reasons why some of the really good European fillies over the years have run so well in this course, because they have what you need to be successful under American racing. I mean, I don't know whether she's going to win only because there's traffic involved and there's other colts in the race and other horses that are good. But she's another one that you fully expect to show up and fire her best shot. And if she does that, whatever price she may end up going out on, you're going to get some decent value, because some of the others are going to take some money. There's too many horses in this race that people are going to like. Everybody's
4 to 5 and 6 to 5 in her last 2 when taking on Elders and winning those races with the 3 straight Group 1 wins. She reminds me of Goldakova. She reminds me of 6 Perfections, even Maj last year, who just came up with those short. These 3-year-old fillies going all the way back to Miesk have had a lot of success, as you said, in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Okay, let's talk about we go from the our value plays to the most vulnerable favorites on the Breeders' Cup card, Jeff. We've got some vulnerable favorites here. You made the line, and so we had to pick it apart a little bit in determining who's a vulnerable favorite. That doesn't mean you're wrong in who you made the favorite. It's just who you are projecting the public will be betting. But which favorite do you think the public will be backing but not collecting on?
Well, I don't know whether Ways and Means is going to not be a favorite. I'm pretty sure she will. Her form looks really good. I only say she's vulnerable because people will be wagering on her based on her form, which is what makes her the favorite. But the last 2 races she won were on an off track. She also, so I don't know if that moved her up, made her look better. It could have. She also got beat twice at odds on in 7 starts already. So it's not like she doesn't always show up. And the other thing is, there's some fillies in this race that are going to carry her for a while. I mean, she's outside, which I like, which helps. But I mean, going 7/8 of a mile can be a dicey distance if you are a committed speed type horse, and there's speed drawn inside of her. And if you allow Society, you say, okay, tell you what we'll do. 7/8 tough distance. We're outside. Let Society go and sit right behind her and then make her run. But, Society is a fast filly. She's not going to wave the white flag. She's going to carry Ways and Means to a point where Ways and Means is going to work harder to get by her than she's used to doing. And that makes her a little vulnerable. If she's good enough to do that, which she may very well be, then she wins. But, as a favorite, again, we talked about Cogburn. You don't worry about stuff like this. You don't have to, but I have to worry about that. Could she win? Yes. Should be 5-2? Yes. Could I see her get beat? Yes.
One of the great things about the Breeders' Cup is you get to see all the best horses in the world, and some of them are your favorites. And as a fan of racing throughout the year, sometimes you can't bet on these horses throughout the course of the year because they're just too short of prices. I've been a fan of Warlike Goddess for several years now. She's now age 7. And it just pains me, Jeff, to say that she, to me, is the most vulnerable favorite on Breeders' Cup Day. Couple of reasons for that in the filly and mare turf is the fact that she is 7. This is a race for the youngers, the 3, the 4, the 5s. You don't see horses her age win this race. And favorites have struggled in the filly and mare turf historically. Just 2 winners in the last 17 years in the filly and mare turf. Yes, we did get the favorite last year, so they were 1 for 16. So trends can change, but 2 for 17 in the filly and mare turf for the favorites over the last 17 years. Warlike Goddess, to me, just feels a little bit vulnerable in this spot. She was the beaten favorite at Del Mar when she was a 4-year-old in this race. Julian Leperoux rode that day, and I was convinced she was a winner. He moved a little too soon, and then she came up flat in the lane. We're at 1 mile and 3/8 this year for the filly and mare turf, and she's in this race because it is 1 mile and 3/8. She spent the last couple years running in the turf against the boys because that was 1.5 miles. I'm not sold on her at 7 that she can handle this particular group. So I'm going to make her the most vulnerable favorite on the card. And I hate to do it, man, because I'm a fan.
Well, she wasn't really going to be the favorite. I was actually leaning towards Cinderella's Dream. But then I went back, and Cinderella's Dream hasn't been out. She's been scratched a couple of times. I haven't seen her breeze. I don't know where she's at. I don't know whether she really wants to run 3 turns or not. So I kind of reversed them. And I went back and looked at Warlock Goddess. And by the way, you were kind to Julian about that ride. He only moved like a half an hour too soon, but whatever.
Well, because it was 2021. 3 years I've softened. Okay. I wasn't kind that day. I could tell you that.
Right. But, she's been running on heavy ground, that she's better on top of the ground. She just ran against the Colts. She got beat a tough beat against the Colts, who's got a legitimate chance, I think, in the turf. So I know she's maybe a little long in the tooth, and she's not quite as good maybe as she has been, but she's running against the fillies now, not the Colts. And, her form, she won a race 2 races back. Again, I think her form has been muddled a little bit by the ground that she's been running over. I got a tip for you. It's not raining here on Saturday or down at Del Mar. So I made her the favorite. I mean, 5-2 is not exactly heavy. And could she be vulnerable? Sure. They're all vulnerable, Yeah. But this is one of these situations where I really didn't want to make her the favorite, but I didn't really have an alternative other than a filly that I'm a little bit not soft on her talent, but just the pattern didn't really look great to me.
In full disclosure, I'm a guy who doesn't like to talk about horses who can't win or won't win. Just not my style as a handicapper. I know you got to go through and eliminate horses off your past performances, but as a public handicapper, I don't get a lot of thrill in saying a horse won't win. Most of them won't. It's mathematics, right? I mean, if you want to walk around and look like you're right 70% of the time, go around and tell people who won't win a race. I mean, you're almost guaranteed to be right 70% of the time. So look, if you have a really heavy favorite, and that's why even it's kind of a welchy pick on my part, because like you said, she's going to vie for favoritism. Nobody's going to be a standout favorite in that filly and mare turf. It's bold if you want to come out and tell me Torpedo Anna is vulnerable at 4 to 5, something like that. It's not the boldest move on my part, but for me, it's more emotionally bold because I don't want to say she's going to get beat. So I'll couch it by saying that. I hope she wins.
I do too, but I tell you what, though, you made a good, interesting point. I see these a lot on Twitter, and I see a lot on the TV broadcast. I'm betting against so-and-so.
Yeah.
Fine, go. But that doesn't do me any good, because I once went to the mutual window and said, I want to bet $20 against this horse, and the guy wouldn't take my bet.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You can't do
who's going to win, not who's not going to win. I can't bet on who's not going to win.
No, you don't get paid for fades. You don't get paid for fades. Yeah. But, some people, I think, would rather be right on Twitter than cash a ticket. So God bless that mindset for those folks. Let's talk about something we can make some money with now, okay? Let's be bold and take our long shots here as we get to our 5th and final topic this week on It's Official. What double-digiter, 2 digits, 10 to 1 or more, do you have some use for, Jeff? Whether exotics or a chance to win the whole dang thing. Who do you like at a price in this year's
shot with a 15 to 1 shot, and that's what I was looking for. I mean, 15-1 could be 20, 25 when the dust settles. So I was looking for a blowout horse, or at least a horse that maybe doesn't win, but hits the board if you're playing exactas or trifectas. I went to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf and looked at a horse named Magnum Force, who's 15-1. He was actually favored in the Flying Childers last time out and got beat by two colts, Asterius and Big Mojo, who are going to get plenty of play. He was favored in that race. He only got beat a little over a length. It was a straightaway with a slow early pace. He got out quick the last part, but he still ran well. He's much better when he's held up back and then allowed to produce a late kick, which he did when he ran in a 16-runner listed stakes 2 races back at York. Got beat a neck in that race. Ran on good to firm that day. So in this race, if the Japanese horse that I think is the quickest in the quick, Ekora Siege, busts out and drags everybody with him, maybe he gets loose in the lead and keeps going. But he's going to tear away at some of those horses chasing him. And if there's a late threat in this race, Magnum Force at 15-1 is the kind, if ridden right, and I think he will be, take him back, let him settle, kick home from the top of the stretch to the wire. If you don't win, get at least a piece of it, maybe pass a few tired, weary speed types in the stretch. And so that's why I made him a price play at 15-1. He might not run anywhere. I mean, it's possible. But with 15-1, that's what you're looking for. So Magnum Force might get a piece of it. Maybe he can pull off an upset in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Just ripping the Band-Aid off, giving the long shot in the very first Breeders' Cup race on Friday. Send it in right off the bat. He's the 4 in the gate, Magnum Force, the 3, Big Mojo, the 2, Asterius. Jeff mentioned they were all against each other in the Flying Childers last time. Let's go back and take a look at that race from the UK. Magnum Force in the blue and the blue cap coming through.
As they blaze down past the halfway point in the Flying Childers. Tropical Storm down the center with a narrow advantage from Mr. Lightside. Asterius on the near side is driven hard, going pretty nicely in the sheepskin noseband. There is Big Mojo. Magnum Force is coming there strongly. So too Zare on the far side. And here comes Tropical Storm on the far side. Asterius rallying on the near side in a wide open Flying Childers. They come inside the final half furlong. And it's Big Mojo on the far side from Asterius on the near side. Asterius beginning to get up. Asterius won the Flying Childers, Big Mojo, and Magnum Force back in third.
So if you like the top 2, why not the third? Like you said, could get a great trip here coming from Off the Pace. Now, speaking of Off the Pace, and when you talk long shots, a lot of times we do end up with off the pace horses when you talk long shots because speed figures matter when it comes to gambling. People who bet the horses tend to lean towards the speed figures, right? They probably have a bigger impact on the tote board than any other factor, maybe other than trainers. Trainers and speed figures are the 2 things that take the most money on the tote board. Come from behind horses, and horses who need races to kind of fall apart and rally typically don't run very fast speed figures, right? They win races when other horses are just gassed. This could be the case in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. There is a tremendous amount of pace in this race, and I'm trying to reach a little bit because my first option, I thought the Chosen Fran's really going to finish up strong. Then I thought maybe Dr. Venkman will finish up strong. Neither one made it to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So which horse can finish in the Breeders' Cup Sprint in a race that is absolutely loaded with speed? That's where I want to talk about for my potential long shot in here. We know there's a ton of speed with horses like Federal Judge in the 3. Skelly out in the 11 can absolutely cook. Straight No Chaser may be faster the first half mile than all of them out of the 8. They're going to go fast. Don Frankie, the Japanese horse, led the Golden Shaheen in Dubai earlier this year. He takes a back seat to nobody in terms of dirt speed. So who do you like from Off the Pace? How about Gun Pilot at 20-1 in here? Steve Asmussen's had a lot of success in the Breeders' Cup Sprint over the years. Asmussen will win the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint if we get the result we're looking for with the great Cogburn on the grass. It could be a huge sprint day for Asmussen, whose runners over the years have just been really morphed into the top sprint barn in the country. Gun Pilot was really good on Kentucky Derby Day from Off the Pace. He can handle the big crowd. He won the Churchill Downs handicap that day. Let's go back and take a look at Gun Pilot, and then we'll discuss a little bit of our chances of him mixing things up at 20-1 plus.
Outside of Hear My Song, head and head for the lead. Gun Pilot is coming down the center. Hoist the Gold is there. There's 1 furlong to go. Zozos and Florent Giroux dig in, but Gun Pilot has hit another gear, and Gun Pilot has taken over. Gun Pilot, just like that, in front by 2. Hear My Song, Zozos, Hoist the Gold, Raise Cane, chasing Gun Pilot. 2.5 length winner.
Jeff Gun Pilot's not the most likely winner of this race, that's for sure. But at 20-1 in the morning line, you could see horses getting tired and gassed, right? The quality of this race are almost all front-running speed horses. How many times do you see a 6-furlong throwdown just run 1, 2, 3, 4 around the track with the speed? You almost feel like somebody's closing, and you're just trying to find the right horse to fit the pattern or the square peg to go in that square hole.
I don't know. I've never charted this, but I think a lot of your 20 and 30-1 shots who win are horses that win because not necessarily they rise to the occasion, but everybody else comes down to their level.
Right.
When you get a sprint like this with a 4, or as my old late dear friend Julio Canani would say, 50 speeds in the race, then you got a chance to have a pace meltdown, which is when you get a weird result. If this was a race in which there's just 1 or 2 pace horses and they both could relax and settle and they probably won't be going at each other's throats, then you probably wouldn't be looking at a deep closer. But
right
in this situation, that's what produces these big prices. And if you're hoping for a pace meltdown, one that could easily happen in this race, because every one of those pace horses are committed to go, then you have a chance for a deep closer to make his mark. Now, I will caution you that Del Mar has traditionally been a track that's very kind to the front runners. It's
right.
It's fine for the middle horses, like Milligan, for example. He might be in the right spot because he's not going to be in front, but he could sit behind the leaders. If you're looking for horses farther than that, but what happened? What was that horse that won for Eclipse Thoroughbreds at Del Mar a few years back from way out of it sprinting?
Aloha West.
Yeah, I mean, if that race had been
run, you didn't hear much from him before or since. Right?
No, because he won a pace meltdown. You couldn't predict that, but it happened. Now,
Lita Justice and some of the horses Janine won back in the early days of the Breeders' Cup. Same kind of situation we get every once in a while in the Breeders' Cup. It happens.
Del Mar at that time was playing pro closers. Now it's pro speed, so it won't be as easy. But again, that's when you get the $40 winner. So if you're hoping that happens, it might happen. And that's what produces a big gamble, a big price.
Only at the Breeders' Cup do you get the all-time winningest trainer in the history of racing and one of the top sprint barns. He's got Hall of Fame type sprinters up and down the shed row over the last decade. Only at the Breeders' Cup do you get him at potentially 20-1, right? With a horse who won on Derby Day in the Grade 1 at Churchill Downs. So it's a great race. When we're looking for prices, that's what we're looking for. If you're shopping for prices throughout the Breeders' Cup, like we said, the come from behinders and the pace meltdowns, those are kind of the races that stereotypically will produce some of the big prices. Every once in a while, you'll catch a lone speed at a big price that's making a big rise in class. But typically, people identify the lone speed and don't let them go away at the prices that you would really expect on those kind of horses. So if you're shopping around for big long shots, second and third, big closers often run second in these races where, look, there are 4 or 5 quality speed horses, but one of them is just championship good, right? And puts away the rest of the speed. The other 3 can't hang. They drop back. Closer plugs along for second. Next thing you know, you got 3-1 over 30-1, and you're cashing an exacta for $250 for 2. So this is the Breeders' Cup. This is why we watch. This is why we handicap, and this is why we play. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the It's Official podcast. Let's review our topics on the big board this week, as we do each and every week. The winners and losers from the Breeders' Cup draw. We talked about Skippy Longstocking having it tough. Next, getting a good draw. We also like the draw for Thought Process in the Juvenile Fillies turf. The most probable winner at the Breeders' Cup, Jeff and I are in agreement. It is Cogburn, even more probable than the big distaff favorite Torpedo Anna. The most vulnerable favorite on the card, reluctantly, I went to my old friend, the 7-year-old Warlike Goddess. Jeff says Ways and Means, coming off that wet track form, won't get the wet track on Saturday and could be vulnerable in the filly and mare sprint. Identifying our best value play on the card, I went with Porta Fortuna, who's been 4-5 and 6-5 in our last 2 Group 1 wins. Jeff went with Jonathan's Way with so many other high-quality horses in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He's 4-1 on the line and would be value at that play. And our double-digiters that you have to use in your long shot plays, Major Force in the Juvenile Turf Sprint at 15-1 for Jeff. He's going right after it in the first Breeders' Cup division. And I'm going to wait to the near the end in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And I'm going to try to wrap things up with Gun Pilot from Off the Pace to get in the Breeders' Cup Sprint exotics at least. And Who knows? You might be yelling "Holy or Kung" as you get a big price in the Breeders' Cup, because you never know what's going to happen here. Last time it was at Del Mar, we had Mike Lorraine at like 80-1 with 2 Japanese winners, things we had never seen before. So it's the Breeders' Cup. Buckle up, Jeff.
Yeah, I will. And again, a couple of days of racing. Looking forward to it. I just hope everybody who's gambling has a good day. And you mentioned my pick in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, the Sprint. If he wins, I can go lay on the beach then for not worry about it anymore, right?
You don't have far to walk at Del Mar. Just get out of the parking lot, right?
Exactly. So anyway, it's going to be a fun couple of days, and I think it's going to be fun because the weather's going to be great. The track's going to be normal, and Del Mar is always fun when it's packed, and you'll have all the fans out there enjoying it. And so good luck to everybody. And look, remember, if your long shot doesn't win but run second or third, you can still make money. So don't necessarily think that they have to all win to have a profitable afternoon.
Appreciate those of you watching in the first Breeders' Cup Wager Guide. If you're not in the Wager Guide, be sure to check that out. 1stfirst.com/guide, and that'll take you to the Wager Guide. You can access it with updated analysis throughout the course of Breeders' Cup Week, and a lot of great information already in there. And want to welcome you to play with First Bet and Xpressbet this week. When you play the Breeders' Cup, we've got a $20,000 exactathon for you. So play exactas throughout the Friday and Saturday, and you can win your share of $20,000 in additional money. Check out all the rules and regs on that, and always sign up for the promos when you log into your wagering account. First Bet and Xpressbet, your home for betting the Breeders' Cup this year. Jeff and I will be back on Thursday, special day for our podcast First Call. Our First Call podcast will be coming up on Thursday this week, typically on a Friday for most racing on weekend previews, but with the Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday, we will move the first podcast up till Thursday, so check that out at all the same locales that you're watching this podcast. We'll be back on Thursday after another 2 days of handicapping. We got plenty of work to do.
Now you'll hear who we really like on Thursday.
There we go. It'll be bottom line decisions come Thursday. Have a great time handicapping, everybody.